I'm Lisa Garcia. I'm a four-year racker. I work with our RMS PDR team, and I am a RISE board member. I wanted to take a moment to thank RISE for being a place where I could go when the country got really chaotic and race relations came to the forefront of the conversation. I didn't really have a lot of outlets I could go to talk to, and RISE was a place where there were like-minded people with similar experiences, and we were able to talk about things that were going on. So I felt like I was able to bring my whole self to the conversation, and it's the most connected I felt as a racker in the entirety of my tenure. One thing I do want to state is that I didn't even identify as Black until halfway through college, which is strange, and it has nothing to do with Black culture, it has nothing to do with Black people. It's about my personal journey, and I wanted to share that journey. And to get that started, I actually brought some pictures. I hope that's okay. So my first picture is the beginning of my story. I was born, and my mom, she was 19 years old. I don't know anything about my biological father except that he was Black, my mother Puerto Rican, and she brings me back where she lives with her father and siblings. And this is me with my grandpa. He holds me, and then he tells my mother, "You should flush her down the toilet, she's too dark." He wasn't kidding, he meant that. So one of the first experiences of my life was being rejected because of how I looked by a family member. But thankfully, there was some love to balance out that, both with my grandpa, he grew to become more loving toward me, but also my dad. So fast forward a year, I'm one, and my mom and dad meet. In this picture, she's actually pregnant with my sister. We're gonna start a family of 4. And my dad is an Italian from New York. He's boisterous, he has the accent, he eats Italian and cooks Italian. It's just the whole 9 yards. But this was my little family. And it soon became me and my sister. And I love my sister, she was my little shadow. But one thing that was always obvious between the two of us is that we looked very different. My sister was very fair, she took after our dad, and I looked more like our mom. But having that relationship where I was the darkest person in the family, where we were a family unit, but we didn't look like a traditional family unit, that was a little tough for me to reconcile. So when I was a kid, I was 3 when my sister was born. I was maybe 4 or 5, 4 when I started thinking about how we fit as a family. And to me, he was my dad longer than he was her dad. And I didn't understand the concept of a stepdad. So to me, he was my dad too, just as much as he was her dad. And she was my sister. She wasn't my half sister. She was just my sister. So to me, that was my mom, my dad, and my sister, and nobody could tell me differently. And when people asked me, "Oh, what are you? Oh, you look exotic, you look mixed. What are you mixed with?" I would always say, "Oh, my dad's Italian, my mom's Puerto Rican." And I took that on as my own identity. So no longer was bio dad any part of my ethnicity. I wasn't Black, I was just Puerto Rican and Italian. And I lied to myself. I told myself that lie every day, and I lied to my friends. And it wasn't a lie though as a kid, it was my truth. And so when they'd ask me, I truthfully felt that. And so to this day, my friends don't know that my dad isn't really my biological dad. It's not anything that I'm hiding or ashamed of. It's just a conversation that didn't happen at that time. It's a conversation that I'm comfortable having now. Everybody that I meet now, I'll be honest with, because I'm finally able to be honest with myself. So that's my family unit. Growing up, there were some situations in which I wanted to distance myself from my identity or my color or my Blackness. And just a couple of examples. When I was in kindergarten, a lot of us girls were talking, we were saying who we had a crush on in school in class. And I named off one of the boys, and he was either a white or Latino, but immediately a girl tells me, oh, he doesn't like N-words, obviously saying the whole word. But 4 years old, I was already being told that people won't like me because of the way I look. So it became recurring. Family, it became friends, I'd say family, colleagues, classmates, strangers. So that became my norm. In high school, I didn't get asked to the dances. Nobody wanted to be my boyfriend. Like, I had never been kissed, and just the whole 9 yards, because I was different, and I felt different. I felt like an outsider, and when I just wanted to distance that part of myself. So I did, and it wasn't until college that I finally felt comfortable with who I was, and I attribute that to the diversity of the people that I started to meet and hang out with through classes, through dorms. So I made a lot more Black friends, I made a lot more Latino friends, and my friend group became very diverse. I got to see some beautiful things in the cultures that I hadn't been immersed in up until that point. I would go to cultural events, I was exposed to books and classes and music, and I just had this cultural renaissance of my own, and it was a really beautiful time in my life, and it helped me to regain that part of my identity. And so at that point, I looked at myself as an Afro-Latina, and I was able to appreciate the beauty in the African part of Afro-Latinidad, and then I still didn't want to erase the Puerto Rican part of me, because that is who I am and that's who I'll always be, but I needed to embrace that Black part, and I started to, and it really helped me to grow. I feel like I didn't fully find my voice though until I had my first son. My son is the product of me and my husband meeting at Wisconsin. He was from San Antonio, and he's Mexican American. So when we had our child, we didn't care what he or she would look like. We just wanted a healthy baby. So in that healthy baby, we had my son, who came out like my identical twin. He looks just like me. And so I had some hard truths to face, because I couldn't tell my son he was beautiful if I didn't feel I was beautiful. I couldn't tell him I loved his curly hair, I loved his tan skin, unless I felt that about myself. And so I had this self-discovery where I had to start accepting the things that I'd been pushing away and the parts of me that I'd never embraced fully. And then it all came to a boiling point, it all came to a boiling point when the national protests happened over George Floyd's murder, over police brutality, and we started having conversations, my son now being 5, about race and about color. And so he asked me, Mommy, what am I? Mommy, am I Black and white? What am I? And so I told him, yes, you are part Black. I'm Black and Puerto Rican. Your dad's Mexican, so you're Black and Puerto Rican and Mexican. And it was a revelation for me in the sense that I hadn't had a family member sit down and tell me that I was Black or affirm that part of who I was, ever. Never, ever. And to be able to give him that power, and for him to be able to own that from such a young age, I really feel like that's helped me in solidifying my identity and define my voice. And I really hope that he can use his voice and be proud of himself and be proud of who he is and continue to be, because there's beauty in that Blackness. There really is.